This morning's passage is centered all around three words: faith, fear, and doubt. And it's a reminder to us the power of all three. It will show us that faith can drive us to walk to places that we may not think are possible. That fear can distract us and make us think walking to those places is impossible, and that doubt can sink us. We're going to extract 3 points this morning to galvanize and encourage us as we go into 2025 to be water walkers. And so we start this morning with a little story. My daughter Sienna is here this morning, and a couple of weeks ago when she came to stay, we went to Playzone. Don't know if anyone's a Playzone fanatic in here, but at Playzone they have a big red slide. Does anyone know the slide? You do? Anyone been on it? Well, let me tell you, even for an adult, this slide can be intimidating. Simon calls it the death slide, which may tell you what you need to know. When Sienna came, she said to me, "Dad, I'm going to conquer that slide today," something that she hadn't been able to do before. And I said, "Sienna, that is fantastic. A couple of words of advice to you. When you get to the top, don't think." And obviously at this point we're at the bottom, so she's all chipper, she's confident. "Yeah, all right, Dad, I know what I'm doing." So we start the journey, we start to go up the stairs, and I happen to notice that she was a lot quieter than she was 30 seconds before. That faith just had a few whispers of fear that began to tinge it. And as we climbed up the stairs, we get towards the top. The first thing we're presented with is a queue. Now, a queue is exactly what you don't need when you're hoping just to get on and do something, but we're in this queue, and she's quiet. And that whisper of fear is now becoming a bit louder and a bit louder and a bit louder. And we get to the edge. And she gets over the edge and she sits down. And what does she do? She begins to think. And the longer you sit there, I know I've been on it, the worse it gets. And that whisper of fear, that's now become full-blown doubt. And she turns around to me and she says, "Dad, I'm not sure I can go down. This one's pretty high." Now, as a dad, there's a couple of options that are available to me here. The first one is not one I'd recommend as a trust-building exercise, but is an option. Push her. She didn't know I thought about that. I would never do that. Push her. Probably not good for building trust. The second option is to just gently challenge her fear. And so I said to Sienna, I said, "Look, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. But I'm telling you now, if you can get past those voices in your head, I guarantee you, as someone who's gone before you, that once you get to the bottom, you will run back up those stairs and you will go straight back down that slide." And she turns around and she lets go. However, somewhat amusingly, if you remember, in the process of letting go, she's changed her mind again. But at that point, it's too late. She's going down the slide, whether she likes it or not. And she conquers her fear with the chorus of, "Oh no, hang on, wait!" And down she goes to the bottom. Sienna took the step of faith. But my role as her dad carried weight and significance. Because who I was to her, the name Dad means something. And it's no different to what we see in this passage. To Peter, Jesus means something. His name means something. It inspires confidence and it inspires trust. But that doesn't just happen by accident. So our first point this morning is that water walkers, we're going to know who we're walking with. The understanding of who we're placing our faith is imperative if we're going to have a faith where we push the boundaries of what our mind says is possible to a place where with the Lord, nothing is impossible. And before this moment with Peter and Jesus takes place, many things have happened. Peter is getting to know Jesus on two levels. Number one, he's seeing the extraordinary, the miraculous. At this point, Jesus has already turned water into wine. He's healed the mother of Peter's wife. He's healed the man born blind. He's calmed the storm with just his voice. He's raised Lazarus from the dead. He's healed the man at the pool, and he's fed the 5,000. there comes this realization, if you're Peter and when you're us, that this man is exactly who he says he is. But just as importantly is the dynamic of their relationship. That every day they eat with each other and they walk with each other and they talk with each other and they learn with each other. Jesus, this man who is so magnificent, is available for the day-to-day. And I say to us this morning that that is just as important to us if we're going to step out of the boat. How empowering that is when you begin to understand that God is actually with us and he's available for the day-to-day. And when we come into a relationship with Jesus, yes, we are putting our faith, as we know, into the Son of God, the miracle worker. But we are also putting our faith in a brother and a friend and an ally. And perhaps it's those things that will really begin to spur us out of the boat. So when Jesus says, "Take courage, for it is I, do not be afraid," Peter's mindset changes. The voice is familiar, because at this point Peter can't see that it is Jesus. So he goes on his voice. There's a familiarity there. Jesus says in John chapter 10 verse 27, "My sheep hear my voice. I know them and they follow me." The initial terror of thinking he had seen a ghost becomes, well, hang on a minute. What if I could walk on the water too? What if Jesus commands those waves and I can tread on those too? And Peter says, "Lord, if it is you, tell me to come to you on the water." And Jesus says one word, "Come." And Peter gets out the boat and he walks towards Jesus. He leaves that boat because he trusts who stood in front of him. We may have those things in our life that we feel the Lord is calling us to. And Peter's example to us shows us that if we are familiar and consistent with the one who stood in front of us, we too will step out of the boat in confidence and in trust. But stepping out the boat is just the beginning. That's the first step. When we step out of the boat, we're walking into another direction. We're turning against the rest of the world. We're walking up that narrow road that Jesus talks of. So our second point this morning is that as well as the extraordinary and all the blessings that will come our way, water walking faith will persevere through trials. And it won't just persevere, it will grow because of them. James chapter 1 verse 2 says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." And if you go a bit further, James chapter 1 verse 12 says, "Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, they will receive the crown of life the Lord has promised to those who love him." So when we step out of the boat, we are led by the Holy Spirit. And we will, some people might say may, I'd go as far as to say will. We will be led through trials, because that is one of the ways our faith can grow and expand and become more robust. Let me ask you a question. If you look back at your journey in your life of faith, when have you grown the most? Has it been when things have just been ticking along nicely day by day? Or is it when there's been difficulties and you've had to find something within yourself and within the Lord to persevere and to keep going? Now, all of these points may seem a bit ironic, because the very next thing we see in the passage, Peter takes his focus off of the Lord and sinks. So you might think, Jason, what are you talking about? That doesn't sound very water-walking faith. But Peter teaches us a valuable lesson. He demonstrates that even at a time when we're at our most vulnerable, when we're sinking, when we feel close to drowning, to cry out to the Lord. That in itself is not weakness. It is a profound act of faith to cry out to the Lord and say, "Lord, save me, help me." Immediately, Jesus reaches out his hand and he catches him. How many times in our lives, when the storm is raging around us, does that fear and that doubt just begin to invade every little nook and cranny and crevice? Yeah, and that weight that we carry on our back just gets a little bit heavier each time. How many times do we know we should go to the Lord, but we just keep it in? And we just think, well, I'll just take this one on my own. The Lord doesn't want to hear my problems. He's way too busy for that. I should be better, and I should know better. How many times do we tell ourselves that? It's the opposite. The Lord wants to hear from us. He's available, and there's no one more credible than Jesus when it comes to hearing our pain. No one is more credible. He suffered too. He suffered in ways that perhaps we cannot even begin to comprehend. The Holy Spirit led him into trial. Jesus was tempted by the devil. And if we ever think that he had it all sussed out, just look at him in the garden towards the end. The weight of his journey, he felt. He knows how we feel. And so one of the ways we can stay in faith is crying out to the Lord when we feel we're in trouble. And what that does is it enhances the trust that we have in God's promises. God makes promises to us. He says he will guide our steps. He will rescue us. He is with us. He hears us. He will carry our concerns. He is our strength. He will always provide. He has given us authority over darkness. He has given us peace, and he's given us the ability to persevere. And these are the things that we'll take into our third and final point, which is that Water Walk in Faith is not about the one-time event, this one little moment in time. Yeah, it's the journey that we take from Jesus, with Jesus, from start to finish. This whole passage, yes, is an event that did happen. It's one event. But if you look a bit deeper than the words, it's a picture, it's a metaphor for our journey with Jesus from start to finish. When we step out the boat, that is just the beginning, a beautiful moment between us and Jesus. And we have chosen that narrow road that Jesus talks about. And many people will be walking in the opposite direction. Our journey against the tide, yes, will bring abundant blessing, but it may bring some difficulties in our life. Water Walk in Faith is something inside. It's not about the steps we take on the outside. Those are a byproduct of the journey that we take in here. Water Walk in Faith is an inside job. Because without no steps in here, we probably won't step out there. And perhaps that explains Jesus' final question to Peter. He says, "Oh, you of little faith, why did you doubt?" See, Jesus knew that Peter's life was not going to be defined by this moment. Yeah, Peter had a far bigger purpose in his journey with Jesus. In fact, ultimately, his journey would cost him his life. And in quite a nasty way. And so Jesus is trying to educate and teach that the journey is in here. And that no matter what happens out here, a water walk in faith is something that no person, no regime, no war, nothing can take that from us. That is the treasure of what we find in here. Now, I've probably gone a little bit quickly because I've been motoring on. The points to remember this morning. To be a water walker in 2025, let's remember who we're walking with, who's in front of us, and ultimately where our destination is, to be with him when it's all said and done here. Secondly, to remember that water walk in faith will grow through trial. It will persevere and it will become more abundant and more robust. Take joy in the trials. They're strengthening us. And thirdly, that water walking faith is not about the steps we take on the outside, but the ones that we take on the inside. I started with a story, and so I'll finish with one. This morning, we have spoken about the amazing things that can happen with faith, but also a lot about trial and about difficulty. I just wanted to add an element of something positive for anyone here this morning who might feel like they're in darkness or perhaps yet hasn't found Christ. 365 years ago today, days ago, what did I say, years ago? Yeah, I'm not that old. If I am, I'm obviously aging very well. 365 days ago. Thanks for correcting me there. 365 days ago today, the man you look at now was very different. Yeah, life was not like this. 365 days ago today, I was at the end of a 20-year drug habit. And that drug addiction meant that all that time ago, I had no friends, I had no family, I had no money, I had no job, I had nothing. In the end, I didn't have any liberty. I was in a hospital, a psychiatric hospital, but something within all of that darkness called to me. And for some reason, I trusted it. And I got out the boat and I walked, and I've never stopped walking since that day. It has been by far the hardest year of my life. There's no two ways about that. And I've got some stories, believe me. Life has been difficult in the drug-using world. But today, and I'm not saying this for your applause or your acclaim, I don't care about any of that. I care about, I love people, and I want people to be well. And to see that first step we take at the beginning, how you get moments like today sometimes where you can look back and see just how far those little steps of faith have taken you. Today, I'm 1 year clean. I'm 1 year sober. Yeah, but that's not the miracle here. I woke up this morning with my partner and with my child. I hadn't seen my daughter for nearly 3 years. Hadn't seen my uncle for nearly 3 years. And what you all will see is the stuff that's happened on the outside. But the real journey is the one that's been taken in here. That is where Jesus has set me free. That's where he'll set all of us free. And so our faith is one of our biggest tools. It's one of our biggest allies. Yeah, because times are going to be hard. If we look at the world we live in, it's filled with war and it's filled with difficulty and it's filled with famine. And yes, we should want to change all of those things. But Jesus says, be of great cheer, for he has overcome the world. Yeah, the battle is already won. As we go into 2025, keep knowing who we're walking with. Keep persevering through the trial. And remember, the gold, the treasure, will be on the inside job.